My name is Jim Traxler, and I'm a volunteer for the Alzheimer Association. And I like to start by telling you why I do this. The reason I do this is because in 2009, my wife of 48 years at that time was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. In 2011, she was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, and I'll talk a little bit about what's Alzheimer's and what's dementia in a little bit. But when we got that diagnosis, I was devastated. I didn't know where to turn or who to turn to, and I felt very much alone. But somebody said, you want to get in contact with the Alzheimer's Association because they can help you. They have support groups. They can help you find the right resources and so forth. So I did, and I joined the support group. And they provided so much support to me and my wife that I determined that for the rest of my life, I was going to pay it forward and do everything I can to help us understand this terrible disease. And because it's important to have the knowledge, it really is. My wife passed away in 2019. In fact, she died March 5th, 2019. Many of you know Dan Hart and Al Hart. Al Hart was the trombone player in the Elders of Jazz, and he was also, as you know, a minister at Avon Lake Presbyterian Church. And he and Jen had been married for 40 years. Karen and I had been married for 56 years. Jan started inviting me to dinner parties, and the rest is history. We were married in 2020, and as I mentioned at the table, right in the middle of the pandemic, and 200 people came to the wedding by Zoom, not in the church. So, but that's why I do it. So I do two things. I participate in the walk. And I know that Cleveland walked in, Alzheimer's is coming up very soon. I participated in the Lorraine County walk. I'm proud to say this is the one thing I will brag about. I raised $9,000 for Alzheimer's Association in the Lorraine County walk. It's so important because all of the services and all the research, that's all free of charge to those who need it. So, with that introduction, let's look at understanding Alzheimer's and dementia. What we're going to talk about today is to actually talk about Alzheimer's and dementia and define those terms. We want to understand how Alzheimer's disease affects the brain. What are the risk factors for getting Alzheimer's disease or other dementia. We'll talk about the stages of the disease, recognize current Federal Drug Administration approved treatments, which is a big change in the last 2 to 3 years. Describe how scientists are advancing research, and then I will let you know what the resources are through the Alzheimer's Association. Since we are a small group, feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask a question. If I'm going to answer it later, I'll tell you that. If not, I'll answer it then. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer. Okay, here we go. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the impact of Alzheimer's on our society. So in these presentations, they like to give you little quizzes to see how much you know, and it helps you to know how much you know. So we're going to test your knowledge now. So how many Americans do you think are currently living with Alzheimer's? 3 million, more than 6 million, 8 million, 11 million. It's actually more than 6 million. Then the next question is, how many Americans provide unpaid care for people living with Alzheimer's or other dementia? And if you think about it, most people with dementia will have either one or two caregivers. So if you do this simple math, it's going to come out to 11 million, right? So 11 million Americans provide care for people living with Alzheimer's and other dementia and aren't getting paid for it. So if you think about the cost of providing care, that is a huge amount of money that is, it impacts their job, it impacts their life. So it's a major impact on our society today. That last slide, about 80% of the population really doesn't know anything about Alzheimer's and dementia. And that's why it's so important for us to come out and give this talk. So I appreciate that opportunity, and I know it's being recorded so that other people will be able to see it as well. Okay, we're not done with quizzes yet. So this one is, Alzheimer's is a normal part of the aging process. Is that true or false? False. False. Really? So you already know. It's because Alzheimer's is a brain disease and it causes problems with memory and behavior. But it's not a normal part of aging. We all forget things from time to time. We all have trouble finding words from time to time. But it's only when it interferes with your daily living that it is a problem, and it becomes a disease. Okay, next question. People younger than 65 can get Alzheimer's.
Wow.
That's right.
How would you know you had it though?
Well, it's much less common, but people younger than 65 can also develop Alzheimer's, which again proves that it's not a normal part of aging, because sometimes people at a young age can get Alzheimer's. And I've heard of some as early as in their 20s.
Wow. Yeah. That's great.
Question? So, yes. Yes.
Why do people with Alzheimer's and dementia get violent?
Right.
Why do they what?
Why do they get violent?
Be violent?
Yeah.
Well, certainly not all of them are violent, and most are not. I mean, there are 6 million people with Alzheimer's. They're not all violent. But, and like it said on the slide before, it affects memory, it affects thinking, and it affects behavior. And what's happening with Alzheimer's is, I'll talk about this later, but parts of your brain are dying. And if the part of your brain that dies is the filter that says don't be violent, then it's not the fault of the person, it's the fault of the disease. So actually with Alzheimer's, being violent is fairly rare. There are other kinds of dementia. In fact, frontotemporal dementia, the behavioral variant can definitely come up with violent behavior. So that's a good question. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to hear from an expert.
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow and the blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual, but there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
So this is a good slide because Alzheimer's and dementia is not an interchangeable term. Alzheimer's is one kind of dementia. It's generally considered to be about 60 to 80% of all dementia is Alzheimer's, and that's why there's so much emphasis on Alzheimer's. My wife died from frontotemporal dementia. She did not have the behavioral variant. She had the aphasia variant, which means she lost the ability to talk and to understand words. Yes.
Is COVID connected to dementia as well?
There's no proven connection between COVID and dementia, but I guess long COVID can create other problems, but yes.
Okay, I had COVID 7 times, RSV twice, upper respiratory infection, black lung, 30-degree burn, broke arm, I can go on and on. But since I had COVID 7 times and RSV twice, so that's 9, am I going to likely get dementia?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But that's one question I'll say. I should say I don't know. Because,
Okay.
but I'm not a
I
doctor.
like that.
I'm
I
not a
like that
doctor.
answer.
And the person to talk to about that, of course, is the doctor. Why is it important to know whether you have Alzheimer's or frontotemporal dementia or vascular dementia?
Certainly having the diagnosis of Lewy body was helpful in our planning because we began to understand where this was coming from in the brain, where otherwise we would not have known. Like we knew something was happening, but what was it? To give it a label actually helped, although it was a big umbrella. It explains some of the characteristics and symptoms that we were experiencing and seeing.
So the diagnosis is important to know which kind of dementia it is because, first of all, it affects the treatment. Now, there is no cure for any kind of dementia, but there are medicines that can help to slow things down. And also, if you can get a diagnosis early, when the person can still carry on a conversation and you know something about what's going to happen over time, while that person is still able to think and say, this is what I would like as I approach the end of life, then they can participate in the plans that you make. So early diagnosis is really important. So to recap what we just talked about, dementia is a general term for the collection of symptoms that are severe enough to interfere with daily life. Alzheimer's is the most common dementia, and it's not a part of aging, it's progressive brain disease. So Alzheimer's in the brain, Let's hear from an expert on this.
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alzheimer described specific changes in the brain, what we now call the formation of plaques and tangles. Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and impacts memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to brain tissue loss and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's, such as memory loss, behavioral issues, problems with thinking, planning, and at the end stage, swallowing.
So, to recap this, the reason it's called Alzheimer's disease is because the doctor that diagnosed it first, Dr. Aloy Alzheimer's, described the changes that take place in the brain, the formation of plaques and tangles. I'll talk a little more about plaques and tangles later. But what that happens is that nerve cells die progressively and the brain shrinks. I remember when Karen was diagnosed, the neurologist showed me the MRI, and you could see the white parts of the brain were the ones who were still alive. The dark part, those brain cells had died, and that just, it happens progressively. Because any kind of dementia is a terminal disease. So now let's talk about the risk factors for getting Alzheimer's. So here's 3 risk factors for getting dementia, Alzheimer's. Which do you think is the greatest known risk factor?
Age.
Age. I heard age. That's correct. As we said earlier, Alzheimer's is not a part of normal aging, but age is the greatest risk factor for the disease. And after age 65, the risk of Alzheimer's doubles every 5 years. And 34% of people 85 and older have Alzheimer's. I'm 85 myself, so I'm waiting to see what's going to happen here, but so far so good.
That's only what the people that were diagnosed, correct?
Right.
And there's a lot of people that don't get diagnosed now.
And like I said, 1 in 3. So I think here's another expert.
Alzheimer's disease is marked by specific brain changes that result in the clinical changes in individual experiences. That is, changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. And ultimately, Alzheimer's is fatal. The exact cause for these changes is unknown, but there are some hints as to what may contribute to an individual's risk. Age is the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's, and when we look at populations of people, we see an increased risk over the age of 65. However, Alzheimer's is not normal aging. Family history is also a known risk factor. Research has shown that those who have a parent or a sibling with Alzheimer's are more likely to develop the disease, and that risk increases if more than one family member has Alzheimer's. When we talk about the genes involved in Alzheimer's, there are 2 categories that could potentially be involved: risk genes and deterministic genes. Risk genes increases an individual's risk for developing the disease, but does not guarantee that they will develop Alzheimer's. Deterministic genes, which are rare for Alzheimer's, guarantee that the person will develop the disease.
So that was a generic kind of talk about the risk factors, but it varies from one segment of the population to another. Black Americans are twice as likely as white Americans to have Alzheimer's or another dementia. And Hispanic Americans 1.5 times as likely as white Americans. And almost 2/3 of all cases of Alzheimer's are women. So there's the reasons why those are different for different segments of the population is not really known. We know about age. We know about family history. In other words, if there's been somebody in your family that's had Alzheimer's, that increases the risk for the rest of the family. But it doesn't guarantee it. And she talked about genetic things, risk genes and deterministic genes. It's very controversial to talk about genetic testing because if you have genetic testing and find that you have the gene that would likely bring on Alzheimer's, I guess that's good to know, but on the other hand, it could be a false positive. And secondly, there's no cure for Alzheimer's. So, and you don't have Alzheimer's yet. So why should you put that burden on yourself? But that's just something that individual families have to decide upon their own. It's kind of interesting that women are 2/3. And if you visit a memory care center, you'll see that most of them are women. One obvious reason is that women tend to live longer than men, so that increases their risk of getting Alzheimer's. But that's not the total reason. So, and with Black Americans, often there can be vascular problems with Blacks and heart disease, and that can cause a greater propensity for getting Alzheimer's. But they're continuing to do research on all these things, and that's important. So now let's talk about the stages of Alzheimer's disease. Now, here are 3 people that are living with dementia. They have dementia now, and it's interesting to hear their stories.
I'm like an overachiever and when you're unable to deliver or you're not performing at the same pace that you once did before, that's frustrating. It's frustrating to not know where you place things. It's frustrating to not be able to explain to someone the problems that you're having. You can't articulate it in a way. It's frustrating to read something and you forgot what you read. It's frustrating to continuously have to change your password and you just changed it last week and you're constantly doing the same thing over and over again.
Math, I can't do a simple tip anymore. You know, I sit there, I stare at it. It's crazy what numbers I can't deal with anymore. And in some ways, that's the disease to me. The other thing that I've increasingly been struggling with are words, which I've dealt with words my entire life. You know, as an avid reader, as a reporter, as a writer. I struggle with them now.
I think the thing that surprises me the most about my dementia is that it is progressive, and I'm finding that I'm forgetting more. And they do memory tests for me all the time at the doctor's, and so that becomes a little disconcerting at times to see my cognitive impairment continue to decline. But again, I really have hope. I don't live really in the future. I can't live in the future. I can't worry about what the future is going to bring. I have to live for today.
And I think that was kind of poignant, what he said. You can't worry too much about tomorrow because you've got today. And that's, when Karen was declining, it was a matter of, let's enjoy today because we don't know what's coming tomorrow. We know it's not going to get better. So let's just enjoy today. And that's what we tried to do. Okay, so Alzheimer's disease is a continuum. It starts out asymptomatic, that is, there are no symptoms. You don't know that you have anything wrong. But the biological changes are starting to take place in the brain. And it's interesting that our kids noticed that she was changing before I did. I'm sort of like the frog in the pot, on the stove. I just would, go along with it. And finally, Karen recognized that she was having problems, went to the doctor, and that's when she got the mild cognitive impairment, which is the second stage. At that point, typically you don't know what kind of dementia it is, but you just know that something's not right. If you're having trouble remembering words, you can't remember where you put your keys. We all do those things, right? We forgot where we put our keys or our glasses. But we can retrace our steps. Okay, I came in from the garage. Oh, I laid my keys down by the phone because I had to go do something else. So you can retrace your steps and get to the thing. With Alzheimer's disease or other dementias, you may not be able to retrace your steps. And so now it's interfering with your daily living. So then you go through 3 stages, interfering with some daily activities. Moderate is it's getting more interference with daily activities. And severe, you basically can't do anything for yourself. And at some point, in my case with Karen, the last 2 years, I put her into a memory care center at Kemper House. And it was my kids that said, Dad, your health is starting to be impacted by your constant care. But Mom, you've got to get help. You've got to do something. So that's what led me to do that. A lot of guilt associated with that. But it was the right thing to do. She was well cared for. I visited her every day, and so forth. The only thing I would say here, this is a repeat of what we're just saying, but I would point to one that says no 2 individuals experience the symptoms and progression of Alzheimer's disease in the same way. Early on, the support group that we went to, the facilitator of that group said, here's one thing to remember. When you've seen one person with dementia, you've seen one person with dementia. In other words, every case is different. Some people are going to live for 4 years, and some people are going to live for 20 years. In Karen's case, it was 10 years. But every case is different. So here's a little light at the end of the tunnel. Up until 2021, there were no pharmaceuticals that could address anything other than treating the symptoms of Alzheimer's. In 2021, I can't pronounce these things, but it's aducanumab came out, and since that time in 2023, there were 2 more drugs that came out. And what these do is slow down the progress of Alzheimer's. It doesn't cure it, it doesn't stop it, but it slows it down, giving you more years, hopefully, of life. So we would like to, I think it's really important that we continue, that's why I raise money. This research, because now there's hope for getting to that day some year when there is a cure for Alzheimer's. One thing that just has happened in the last month or so is that the FDA approved a blood test for the presence of Alzheimer's. Now that's huge. If you go back 10 years or so, you couldn't really diagnose Alzheimer's without doing an autopsy after they died. And that's how bad it was. Now, you can pretty accurately get a diagnosis. And to have a blood test, you can get immediate. You don't have to go through an MRI or something like that. My job here is to give you some education about Alzheimer's. But in terms of you as an individual, I can't help you with that. You have to go to a healthcare professional to get that. And by knowledge, how about that? It's time to talk to a healthcare professional. And as we mentioned, because everybody's Alzheimer's or dementia is different, treatments work in varying degrees and they're not effective for everyone. And by the way, when I mentioned the treatments for Alzheimer's, those are treatments for Alzheimer's and not other dementias. The other dementias, there really is no treatment, even in the pipeline. They're hoping that maybe stem cells can help frontotemporal dementia, but they're still in research. And we're going to talk a little more about research. So now we're going to talk about the research that's taking place in Alzheimer's.
This is an incredibly exciting time in Alzheimer's and dementia research. The advancements that we've made in the last decade to understand the disease as a continuum, meaning that the biological changes are starting a decade or more before someone is experiencing the changes in the memory and thinking. This sets the stage for possible prevention. The idea that when we have the tools to identify those individuals at the earliest time point, and when we have the interventions to target individuals at that earliest time point, we can intervene to stop or slow the progression of the disease before an individual loses their memories.
Growing evidence indicates that people can reduce their risk of cognitive decline by adopting key lifestyle habits. More and more research shows that factors like exercise, nutrition, and aggressive management of cardiovascular risk factors may impact our ability to slow cognitive decline as we age. And through current studies, we're exploring how certain lifestyle factors may even reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's and dementia.
We have a whole presentation on 10 healthy habits that can help to prevent getting Alzheimer's. I mean, it's not going to work all the time, but you have a much better chance. And I can sum up that 1-hour presentation in one sentence, and that is, whatever is healthy for your heart is healthy for your brain. Partly because 25% of the blood that comes out of your heart goes to the brain. So if you got a healthy heart, chances are you're going to have a healthy brain. So maybe in a future time I'll give. That's the only happy presentation I make.
Oh, so, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm happy because you can do something. You can't take drugs yet, but you can live a healthier life, and that's going to improve things.
A lot of hope does come from the Alzheimer's Association, all the research that is being done. Even though there is not a cure today for the disease, I know in my heart there is going to be a cure one day. And I know we're getting closer for that cure. Because even if you fail in a research study, you learn from that failure in the research study. That failure always brings progression.
It's nice to see the association spearheading in many ways the emphasis on getting the money at the federal level and at the private sector to get the research done so that someday there will be an effective treatment, hopefully cure, hopefully prevention.
The next two things are on clinical studies, which is how research is done. You can only learn what's causing Alzheimer's and other dementias by doing clinical studies. So the next two presentations are about trials.
Participating in a clinical study is one way that everyone can get involved in a very direct way in the fight against Alzheimer's disease. And for people who currently have dementia or Alzheimer's disease, there are some additional benefits. You get access to very close medical care. You also may be among the first people to have access to the treatments that will eventually prove to work.
You might hear the phrase negative trial, which means it didn't hit the endpoint. It didn't result in an FDA-approved treatment for the disease. But I think the only negative trial is one that doesn't provide us with valuable information. If the trial is well designed and is a good scientific experiment, we can get extremely valuable data that can help plan the next trial and make it even better than the last one. And it gets you that much closer to that FDA-approved drug, to that effective treatment, and maybe someday even prevention. By participating in clinical research, you can move us toward methods of treatment and prevention for all those affected by this devastating disease. Alzheimer's Association Trial Match is a free clinical studies matching service for those with dementia, caregivers, and healthy volunteers. To start, simply create a confidential user profile and receive a list of studies that may be a match for you. Don't just hope for a cure, help us find one.
So, and that's the last bullet point here. The trial match is a clinical studies matching service. And you'll see a later slide that shows you how you can get there. This is probably the most important slide. The 24/7 helpline is an amazing resource. If you have somebody in your family, or you're taking care of somebody, or you need to know something about Alzheimer's, you can call this helpline 24/7. I mean 24/7, 365. If you call this helpline at 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve, you'll be connected to a master's level clinician who will be able to answer your question and direct you where to go to get the help that you need. That's just amazing. You can also, this alz.org, which is the easiest possible URL you'll ever get, website, alz.org. Yes. What is it? alz.org. Okay, you got it. This website is a mountain of information. The only problem with it is it has so much information that's sometimes difficult to get to the right place. But when I first was trying to figure out how to deal with Karen, that's where I went. And actually, it's where I found out about frontotemporal dementia, which then led me to take her to a neurologist to get that thing. But it's an amazing resource. And we were talking about the trial match. If you go to alz.org/trial match, that will take you. And Cleveland Clinic has studies going on all the time. University has studies all the time. And there are others in other places. And that's the only way we get to a cure, is all this continuing research. And one of the things I would point out is that they've had more difficulty getting diversity into the trials. It's mostly white people that are in these trials. You need more Hispanics, need more blacks, need more Asians, so that all communities are covered. So that's really important. But at the bottom of the last page is a number that if you, by the way, does anybody have dementia in their family right now?
I don't even know.
Okay.
I don't even know.
The Cleveland area chapter has what's called dementia care coaching. And what that means is if you call this number, you can make an appointment with a social worker to make an appointment to go and get coaching. You can explain the whole situation to her, and she will help you come up with a plan to address your specific information. So that's a much bigger step than calling the helpline. The helpline is kind of a one-off thing. This is to come up with a plan for by this coach, and she's really good. So please remember this number and call it if you think you need some coaching, because that's really important. So ways to join the fight. Some of the ways that you can get involved. First is you can become a volunteer, like me. The two kinds, well, there's basically three kinds of volunteers. One is you can join the local walk committee. You could join the Cleveland Walk Committee that plans the walk and the fundraising. Second is to become a community educator, like myself, and go out and make these talks. And there's a training course to do that. And we are continually updated with the latest news. And also, you can be a facilitator for a support group. And one thing I didn't mention about support groups, you get a lot of good information from presentations that are made at the support groups. But more important than that is you're talking to other people in the same situation that you are, and you say, I got this problem, and they say, oh, well, this is what we did, you know. And I got more information from other people in the support group than I did from the facilitator. So that's really, really important. Other things that you can do is advocacy. There are people that go to Columbus on a regular basis to talk to the legislators about getting more money for Alzheimer's research, and they go to Washington, D.C. Regardless of your politics, everybody is affected by Alzheimer's and dementia. So they usually find a good ear, both in Columbus and in Washington. This is a tribal match, which I mentioned before. And you can see it's there, alz.org/tribal match will get you to that. Walk to End Alzheimer's. And there are, I think, 4 walks, at least, maybe 5 in this area. Wayne County, Cleveland, Nashville, Akron, and a couple others. Well, thank you very much. You've been very attentive. Appreciate that.